Just wanted to say hello to everyone and thank you for joining me on this journey, on my story. It definitely has been convoluted, exciting, dramatic. It's just been amazing. And when I look back on it, I realized that I got a wonderful foundation, almost a private school education at Peabody. And I've been focusing my life on being an agent of change, solving problems, finding better solutions, and making a positive difference. And everything I've worked on has been about that. Every relationship I've had, everything I'm working on now, it's all about making a difference. And it started with this cup, and I happen to have it right here. And this was it was the definition of success, which I'll get into a little later. But it was a gift from my parents when I graduated from 8th grade. My mother and father both worked, and I love the smell of coffee. So my mother said, well, I'll put some coffee, a couple teaspoons in your milk. And I had coffee milk. Then it kept getting stronger. I'm definitely a coffee addict. And in 8th grade, my mother saw this, my father agreed this represented their values and the kind of life that they wanted for me. And they gave me other gifts too, but this mug is all chipped and stained, but it's a keepsake, but we'll talk about it a little bit later. But that's where it began, the definition for me about the kind of life I wanted.
Go ahead, Terry. Talk about your caregiver role with your parents.
Okay. Well, the caregiver role, I mean, I know this perhaps is out of order, but while I was getting my MBA at NYU and also an intern at Pfizer in product research, my father had Alzheimer's. And I was going back and forth. I arranged my schedule so that I was going back and forth either every weekend or every other weekend to support my mom with the challenges of dealing with my dad. And it just kept going. I was on call and then unfortunately continued with her as she got ill, and I'll talk about that a little later. But shifting back to what did I want to be? I have to say that I started out, and some of you who have been fabulous artists and recognized artists in your careers, I wanted to be an art teacher. And I wrote an article. I had to write about that, I think, in 7th grade. And when I started taking art classes, I just wasn't all that good. And Mrs. Feynman, when I told her about what I was hoping to do with my life, she said, "You're not good enough. I'm not going to recommend you to Carnegie Tech," and that's where I wanted to go. So that was the end of my career aspirations. But instead, okay, I was good in all my classes, and I was in the scholars program, and a lot of you know, we all did well. But really, I honed in on my writing, and I had to write for my English classes. I had expository writing every week. I mean, I don't know, the kids today don't have half the homework that we had. We had hours and hours of it. But I was able to hone in on that talent, that skill, that creativity, and it's been the foundation of everything that I've done since then and continue to do. And I was the first page editor. Now, what I want to say is, I don't know if you folks remember, but in the yearbook, I was teased about the fact that I was on the Gimbels teen board, and I know that there's a slide about that. Okay, there I am. Okay, they were teasing me because I was on the Gimbels teen board, and I was required to write, everybody on the teen board had to write a couple of articles, feature articles about style trends for their newsletter. So I did, and this is what happened in the yearbook. That I wasn't the page 1 editor, I was the fashion editor, but all in good humor. But it was a wonderful experience when I was on the Gimbels teen board. I did fashion shows. We did newspaper spreads. I had a couple of slides. But I took them off because I couldn't send it. I had to shorten this load a little bit in order to send it to you, Rob. That's what took a little longer. But in any case, one of the things that I experienced that were amazing when I did some fashion shows with Melissa Babish, who was Miss Teenage Pittsburgh while she was representing her high school in South Fayette Township, Cuddy High. And she became Miss Teenage Pittsburgh, Miss Teenage America.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Pitt together. We lived in the dorms, and she was dating Terry Bradshaw. He had a red Corvette, and every time she had a date with him we all wanted to hear about it afterwards because she was dating him, and ultimately she married him, and she was his first wife. And what's interesting and we kept in touch, and then we lost touch. Years later, I'm talking about maybe 16 years later, Bill and I were flying to Chicago on a business trip. And she lived in Chicago, but she had visited family in Pittsburgh, and we wound up meeting each other at the airport. So we got all caught up and everything. And it was wonderful, but it was so cool because she was so laid back. Okay, so that was my experience. And I also got retailing experience at Gimbel's, worked on Monday nights, Thursday nights, Saturdays, inventory. So I got some retailing experience as well and made some money. So that was good too. Now, what I also got out of Peabody was some leadership experience. And I served on a committee, and I think a lot of you will remember this. Girls were not allowed to wear pants to school. Mr. Feiner had a committee of teachers, parents, and students, and we had to kind of negotiate, well, how can this work? They can't be too short, they can't be too tight. We had one of the teachers, I won't mention him, may he rest in peace, who was there on the committee, said, it's distracting. They have these hot pants. I mean, I don't want them. I don't know that that's a good idea. So we were going through all of that, and we came up with the rules, and we were able to wear pants, and they've been wearing them ever since. Of course, now it's standard fare, but that was a big deal back then. Another thing that I wanted to mention, and I say this because I got all A's in most of my classes, and my mother took great pride in that, vicarious thrills out of it. And then I got a C in gym, and I wasn't that coordinated. I mean, those of you who were cheerleaders and who knew, I wasn't that great. So I took dance classes, and I took tap and modern dance, and I've been dancing ever since. And it's the most wonderful thing. I go to meetup groups. I dance around my house. Now I live in an apartment. The people upstairs think I'm cool because I'm the old lady that dances up and down the stairs and all around the place at 9 and 10 and 11 o'clock at night when I'm not out dancing with my friends, because I have a Fitbit, and it's my coach and it's my slave driver, but I'm addicted to it. I exercise every friggin' night. So it started back then, because I was a klutz in gym. So starting with the University of Pittsburgh, I wasn't sure what I wanted to major in. So I majored in English. That wasn't enough. Then I took journalism. Wasn't enough. Then I took speech and rhetoric. That wasn't enough. So what I really wanted, and I kept exploring, and I talked to a couple professors to get guidance. I wanted a communications major, but Peabody didn't have it yet, a full major. They had some courses. So I worked with two professors, and I filled out my major by I was cross-registered for courses like media, film, and some other courses at Carnegie Tech, which is now Carnegie Mellon. And it was allowed. And one thing that was beautiful about Pittsburgh is that program expanded from there. So that was kind of innovative. Now it's all the schools share the reciprocity and registration, which I think is very cool. But that's what I was, a self-designed communications major.
So would it be fair, Terry, to say that really now that Pitt actually has a communications major, you were one of the pioneers that made it happen? Is that a fair statement?
I think I know I'm one of the first degrees, and they actually said to me, what do you want to call your degree? And I said, actually, it's officially a BA in communications and speech and speech, because I was taking a lot of rhetoric and speech courses. You might not appreciate that tonight, but that's what I was doing, and I was interested in doing that. So and they worked with me. So I would say I had a self-designed major, and it benefited me. I think it benefited me because the courses at Carnegie Mellon or Carnegie Tech at that time were great too.
And
And the
now
professor,
most universities have communications majors, so
They
you're
have-
out there in the front.
yeah, I was right there. And actually 2 years later, they had a full program. So I think I might have pushed it a little bit because I didn't get what I needed there. Okay, Richie
So
Havens.
tell me about your 20th birthday and what's with you and Richie Havens. Tell
Richie
us.
Havens. Okay, well, first of all, the summer of '72, when it was still safe to hitchhike around Europe and cheap, and with Air Icelandic and youth hostels and the trains, your rail pass and everything. I was planning a trip to Europe. I saved some money, and I was going with a girlfriend. And we were planning to go around my birthday in May. Now, University of Pittsburgh was on trimester. So we actually ended the whole season term. They had summer classes, but in April. Okay, so and remember, this was also the period in the 70s when a lot of these great musicians like James Taylor and Richie Havens performed at the colleges. And they both gave concerts that April. And I sold tickets at Pitt, so I was on the committee, so I always did those kinds of things. So we were invited back afterwards, and there was a reception, and I had a chance to chat with Richie, and he talked to me, and he kept engaging and asking questions. And as I was answering him, he said to me, you know, you're an old soul. And what does that mean? He says, you're an old soul. My grandmother was an intuitive soul. She was from Barbados, and I have that gift. You've been around before. And when you marry, you're going to marry someone a lot older than you because you really are an old soul. Then he said, of course, it's the age of Aquarius. What's your sign? I said, Gemini, May 21st, right on the cusp, Gemini. Okay, then he proceeds to tell me very specific and accurate information about me. And I talked to him for like about a half an hour, and we went back and forth, but it was amazing. He also lived in Greenwich Village, and he had given me contact information of his administrative assistant just to keep in touch. That was it. But it was really an interest, and I never forgot it. Okay, so 3 weeks later, I'm in Europe. We flew Air Icelandic, and we landed in Belgium, and then we were hitchhiking. So we're in Germany at this point. It's a few days before my birthday in May. And we got rides, and I have to say it was relatively safe back then. Obviously, not something you would want to do today, but we got a ride with an Army truck, 2 guys that were at the base in Stuttgart, outside of Stuttgart, and all we cared about is, do you have a laundromat at your base? Because we've been hand washing, and we'd love to be able to use it. And they said, well, you know, we actually do. And they both had girlfriends that were nurses, that were roommates. You can stay with our girlfriends and you can come do your laundry. And it was a Friday. So the guy that was driving, he said, by the way, you know, the Officers Club tonight is having a concert, and I have 2 extra tickets. Would you folks like to go? I said, we'd love to. Who's playing? Richie Havens. This is 3 weeks after I met him in Pittsburgh. He's performing in Stuttgart, Germany. So I wrote a note and said, Gemini from the University of Pittsburgh is in the audience. And of course we were invited back. And I had also he had a whole entourage. You know, he was very well known back then and very popular. He had his best guitarist, who we remained friends with, Dino. He was there, and they all welcomed me like I was an old friend. And then they were on their way to Munich, and we had plans to go to Munich because I wanted to go to the Hofbrauhaus to celebrate my 20th birthday. It was only a couple days later. So we said, oh, we were going to go to Munich. They said, well, why don't you go to Munich? And I told them why we wanted and what we wanted to do. And guess what? Richie and Dino joined me at the Hofbrau house to celebrate my 20th birthday. Okay, and I'm gonna say I'll share something. That wasn't the last time I saw Richie. I kept in touch with him for a while, Christmas cards, holiday cards to his office in Greenwich Village. And then, and Bill was always a fan of his, and he knew my whole story because I also met Vangelis, and we met Vangelis in Paris when he was with Aphrodite's Child, a Greek band, which I'll talk about just for a minute. But with Richie, Bill had always been a fan, and I think it was about 18 years later. Well, I'll be talking about it. But we were living in New Jersey, and he was doing the coffee house circuit, and he was performing in New Hope, and he was doing jingles. I'm sure people remember something. I think it was McDonald's and Amtrak. Anyway. And so I said, I said to Bill, do you want to meet Richie? He goes, yes, let's do that. So I remember we went there and I wrote a note, and this is 18 years later. Gemini from the University of Pittsburgh is in the audience. And of course we were welcomed back, and he was only performing with Dino. Dino had a full-time day job working on Wall Street, but he was still doing these gigs with Richie. And we were, it was hugging and kissing and oh my God. And then I said, and Richie, I'd like you to, now you'll hear about Bill, but I'd like you to meet my husband, Bill. And Bill, for your information, was 19 years older than I. So I said, Richie, I'd like you to meet my husband. And what did he say? See, I told you. So he remembered. And then we kept in touch from there. Okay. So at the University of Pittsburgh, I mentioned I had 4 part-time jobs. Okay, I maintained my Gimbels job. I worked at the Pussycat. It was lingerie and Squirrel Hill retailing, and but the main job I had that was actually and the most meaningful, and it changed my life. I answered the phones 4 days a week at the Women's Center at Pitt, and this is in the middle of the 70s during the push for the Equal Rights Amendment. Would you believe we're still 2 states short of ratification now? But we were fighting for that. And of course, the National Organization for Women was very active. And Eleanor Smale, who was the president, lived in South Hills. She was good friends with the executive director. And I minored in women's studies. Okay. So then that was the tie-in with this paid work. And I kept getting calls from women in crisis. You name it, rape, child abuse, husband abuse, legal problems. They would have been evicted, all kinds of health issues. And I was the front line. And remember, no Google, no computers. Pick up the phone, it was long, that kind of thing. We had a selector to work with, and landlines. But I had to call around and find them help. And I created a form to take their information down. And then I would follow up with them. And for 6 months, I was doing this on top of the other administrative work I was brought in to do. And after 6 months, I kept track of it. And I said, what are the topics that people are asking for? Where are they located? What are the needs? And then I called a meeting. I talked to Cynthia Vanda and Marie Briscoe, who chaired the Women's Studies program, and Cynthia Vanda, who was the head of the Women's Center. And I said, we need a comprehensive user-friendly program, resource directory for Pittsburgh. We need something and because we need to help women. And so they loved the idea. We met with the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and I got an independent study. I had 12 students work with me. That was the end of my junior year for my senior year. And we captured a whole lot of information. I created the template for each entry, so we were consistent. All the topical areas we were going to research and everything. And of course, it was longhand filling out forms. So I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh at the end of 1974, and we had boxes of all the raw information. So the University of Pittsburgh hired me, gave me a typist to create Help Yourself, a women's people's resource directory for Pittsburgh. It was published by the university, sold for $4 at all the bookstores. And I was going through some of my old papers to prepare for this. It sold out, and they had to go through another run. They didn't know how, and it was paying for the independent study and the grant that I had and the typist. I mean, it was just amazing. And they did well, but it also launched my career because I handled all the PR, and we got a lot of publicity. I think there's one article, I don't know if it was taken out or not, that might follow up or not. I'm not sure. I think there might be one, but in it, no, okay, I took it out because it was too long to send you. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. This is one of many articles, but it said, Terry Pollock is a walking directory. Okay, that's what was happening. And everybody made such a big deal. I mein, I was interviewing at all the stations. So as a result of that, after I graduated from Pitt, you're going to hear my cat here. I don't want to torture her by putting her in her box for so long, but she is here, and she's more like a lap dog. But in any case, so I started my career in PR, and it's good that you can't see. There's a tail going all across my screen. But in any case, and I also was contacted about doing a radio show on the side. Now, let me also talk to you about this conference. Because NOW was organized, and because Ellie Smale was the president, we had a regional conference on women's issues. And we had all the luminaries, Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, Gail Sheehy, all these people. And Jane Pauley, young Jane Pauley with her ponytail, was the moderator. And I helped with the conference. And so I had a chance to meet all of these people. And as a result, I was featured, there were 10 of us that were featured in a Red Book article called Women Making It Happen in Pennsylvania. Now, we had a lot of women leaders from across the state. We had Helen O'Bannon, who was the first utility commissioner, and others who were all at this conference. And some of them were featured. There were 10 women that were selected for this article in Red Book magazine. This was a big deal. And the editor of this article, Fran Ruffin, her uncle, there it is, her uncle was the president, happened to be, she was also from Pittsburgh, the president of United Mental Health. So that's how she heard about Help Yourself. And what I was honored just to be part of this whole thing. And here I am, the first woman mentioned. I'm just graduating. They mentioned my job at United Mental Health, which I got right after I graduated. So I was hired as the PR director for United Mental Health. And what I learned, and that gave me such a foundation. It was unbelievable. I learned Rosemary Plessett, the executive director, was a brilliant lady. And she knew how to raise money, how to advocate. She knew how to create win-win partnerships between companies and stakeholder groups, something I'm known for now and have been doing for ever since. And also how to organize major conferences. So it was an amazing experience. And it was a United Way agency. I'll mention this in a second, but it was a United Way agency. And so we also had to participate on United Way campaigns. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But because of my experience and exposure, the lawyer from he was actually a friend of mine who graduated from Pitt Law School. He was a lawyer for Wish and 13Q, and they had a half-hour public affairs slot opened and said, do you think with all your, Help Yourself and all your contacts and yada, 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 do you think they didn't say yada, yada about this. Do you think that that you can produce and host a weekly talk show on issues that matter to this community? And I said, wow, yeah, I'm going to do it. I didn't say no to anything. Everything was a new experience. And so he said, well, we want an audition tape. So I did a cassette interview, and it was my first show. And so I started calling it Open Rap, which was very cool for those days. And I decided it was too hokey. So I was getting, I had the mayor, I had political figures. But what was cool about it is some of the luminaries that I had on my show, Donahue was a big name, and anyone who was on his show that might be passing through Pittsburgh, I got their PR, their media kit. If it fit my lunch hour, because that's the only time slot I had once a week was my lunch hour, and I couldn't afford a car in South Hills. I mean, the office for United Mental Health was downtown. I hitchhiked to South Hills to the office on my lunch hour on Monday. It wasn't live show. It was put in what they call the can. And just had a grab. This is my cat, by the way. I'm not going to waste much time, but she's adorable, but she's just very curious. Anyway, and so yeah, so I hitchhiked, and sometimes the talent, if they were going on lunch hour, they felt sorry for me. They'd drive me back downtown after my show, and they'd keep it in the can. It ran on AM and FM, two sister stations, on Sunday drive time and Monday morning. And some of the people I had on my, oh my God, I had so many cool people on my show, locals as well as nationally known people. Ben Stein, who was just starting out at that time, was the son of Herb Stein. Now we know him as a comedian, very wry wit, very, very dry humor, sarcastic as heck, I'm sorry. You might have to edit that out. Anyway, but he was funny before, but very serious, because he co-authored a book with his father, who was a well-known economist. And but afterwards we chatted, and he was just a rocket. But it was so cool to have met him at that time. And that's really what he was doing before he really took off on his own. Gail Sheehy, the author of Passages, who was also at our conference on women's issues. And another luminary, and this was during the odd and even gasoline days. I had to get a spokesman from Gulf Oil, and the director of corporate communications at that time was William Cox. And so he was on my show, and I was prepared to dislike him and not trust him. And what I said to myself was, no cigar chomping fat cat oil executive is going to pull the wool over my eyes. So I did a lot of research. And he did interviews the entire week on all the media. And he told me I was one of the most informed, well-organized interviews he had the whole week. And he wanted to hire me at Gulf. I said, I don't want to work for Gulf. But I recruited him to chair my media committee. And then he got on our board of directors, and we worked on United Way campaigns together for a couple of years, because his CEO, Jimmy Lee, was the chairman of the United Way campaigns. And of course, the Steelers and the Pirates of the 70s supported the United Way campaign. So we were working with them. So we had a chance to meet them. I already met Terry Bradshaw, but I met Rocky Bleier. I dealt with him years later. I'll be talking about that too. But yep, that's what so it was an amazing, amazing experience. Okay. So what I needed to do, I enjoyed all of my experience and my career thus far, but I wanted to experience another location. So my cousin from Massachusetts had gotten a job in Atlanta, saying, oh, this is an up and coming place, you ought to check it out. So I went down there for about a week, and I started interviewing, and then I was hired as the PR director for the Atlanta Merchandise Mart. Now, the Mart is on Peachtree, and they were building the apparel Mart. It was nuts. All I want to say is crazy. Every week was a different market: floor covering, apparel, home furnishings, gifts, all these industries. It was absolutely bonkers. But it was wonderful, wonderful experience. And during that, but there was a lot of politics involved. Another challenge was they were sexist and racist down there back then. So there were lots of politics that I didn't understand. So Bill, I would keep a notepad. I'd write questions to Bill, because Bill became my mentor. So I was calling him about every couple weeks after hours that I need to talk to you. How do I handle this? How do I handle that? And once in a while he would have a meeting in Houston, and he'd fly through Atlanta. We'd grab a quick bite right by the airport, and then I'd take him, and he would take the red eye back to Pittsburgh. So that's what was happening. But it was a crazy experience. But while I was doing that, I was in touch with an old friend of mine, Steve Weizenkorn, who is a year older and also a Peabody grad. And he had gotten his PhD in HR. And he was interested in, and he was helping people informally switch careers, shift careers, think about their careers, what they want to do instead, whatever. And so he decided to create a firm downtown. He started renting space and we were talking about it. And I helped him come up with the name Career Action. I started helping him design the logo and all this and that. And then I was thinking, I was homesick. I mean, it was an interesting job, but I didn't want to stay there. And I wanted to get back to Pittsburgh. You know, I was homesick. I hadn't really been too far for too long. So I came back. And I started working for Steve, and I helped him with marketing and PR, and also counseling those who wanted to go into communications. And I edited all the resumes too. And I called Tony Martin, who was the public affairs director at Wish and 13Q, and I said, Tony, I'm coming back to Pittsburgh. And she goes, do you want to do the show again? I said, oh yeah, can I? So there I started right away. As soon as I moved back, I was doing the half-hour show. But this time I actually got rid of it. I had it on the slide and said, no, I'm taking it off. I actually could afford a car. So I actually had a green Camaro, my own car at that time. I didn't have to hitchhike anymore. So I had already made a little progress to the next level. So also, while I was there, I started, Bill had gone through a divorce. He was already in the throes of that even before I moved to Atlanta, and then continued, and that was over. And he continued as my mentor, and he was a reference for Public Relations Society of America and all this. And we started, I want to say we started a date, but he was concerned for me a little bit. I won't go into the details. I know I told Bob all of this, but because of the age and some other things, he wasn't sure it was a good idea. And I'm in my late 20s at this time. He's 40, he's in his 40s. So he's a little more serious. But I'm saying all we're talking about doing is going out to dinner. And we wound up going out to dinner, and we had a very nice time. And then we kept going out to dinner, and we went to the movies once in a while. And before you know it, we're dating. And it was for about 4 or 5 months. And it seemed promising. And we kept saying, if things continue, maybe we might live together in Shadyside or something. And then Bill was transferred to Denver and called me and said, I got to talk to you. I've been transferred to Denver and I want you to come with me and I want to marry you. And I said, yes. So this was our wedding. Some of you will recognize some of the people, my parents, may they rest in peace, my brother, Bill's 3 kids who were closer to my age. Trisha, his oldest, his daughter, was only 7 years younger than I, chronologically, but emotionally, remember, I'm an old soul. But it was an amazing experience. We loved Denver. What we loved, and I freelanced there. What I loved about Denver was the people were a lot like people from Pittsburgh, very warm and friendly and down to earth. And I had never even been to Chicago, so I didn't know what to expect from Denver. And we really liked it. And I was already thinking about starting to take courses toward an MBA because I was freelancing and I already had expertise, but I knew that I could even be more beneficial to my clients if I could take it to the next level. So I was starting to take courses. And, but I did do, getting back, can we just go back to that for a moment? I also worked as a volunteer. I was a volunteer with the AMC Cancer Research Center Women's Health Fundraiser. And Beverly Sills and Diane Sawyer were the guests, and they were honored. I had a chance to talk to Diane Sawyer, and I met her again 20 years later in Princeton. What we talked about, we met after the event, and there was this dessert table. And we're swapping stories about favorite desserts. And what we discovered was our favorite dessert in common was creme brulee. Then we started talking about, well, which restaurants in New York are the best? Which ones in Washington? And we started doing this, and we were laughing, saying, I can't believe we're having this conversation. But we got a real kick out of it. Okay, so I'm going to say what happened later, many years later. It's not on a slide, but to save time. Okay. So I live in Princeton, and the mayor of Princeton was Cookie Roberts' sister. They actually grew up in New Orleans, but she married Mr. Sigmund. Barbara Sigmund was her name, and she actually had cancer in her eye, and I used to wear an eye patch that matched. She had fabric eye patches to match every outfit. Beautiful, very, very attractive woman, lovely woman. And Cokie Roberts was her sister, and she was very active on the board of Women's Space in Princeton, which was for rape victims and those victims of domestic violence. And it was a safe haven for families to stay. And when Barbara died, they honored her memory by having the Barbara Sigmund Award. Now, a friend of mine from Bristol Myers Squibb invited me to a table, and I said, who's being honored? And she said, Diane Sawyer. I said, Diane Sawyer, I met her in Denver. So we were at the table, and it was right before the event. She was sitting almost next to me at the next table. And I went up to her and I said, I don't know if you'll remember me, but quite a number of years ago in Denver, I met you at an event, and we had this very interesting conversation about our favorite. And she said, we both said the word at the same time, dessert, creme brulee. I remember that conversation. That was so cool. And do you still like? I said, I love. And we both agreed we liked it. We both liked with fruit on top. But that was another one of those full circle things. Okay. So I love when those happen. So Bill was transferred to another division of Gulf Oil in San Diego. And it was General Atomic in La Jolla. That was another very interesting experience. And I don't know if Debbie Parker is joining us tonight, but we reconnected. She and her husband and I reconnected while we were there. Other friends from Pitt, my days at Pitt, now lived in Carlsbad, so we connected there. And it was a very interesting experience. We used to spend most of our weekends exploring parts of, because California is such a beautiful state. We spent more time, I think, north of San Luis Obispo. And then we also went to another meeting, these luminaries at these events all the time. Bill was a jazz aficionado. From his era, he loved Ella Fitzgerald. I mean, he worshiped her. She was one of his favorite performers, and she was honored at an event that was a fundraiser for the Indian tribes that were on the oil reserves for scholarship funds in Los Angeles. And Ella she performed, and we had a chance to chat with her. And Bill gave her, they hugged each other. He didn't even want to let go. He was so excited to see her. And she performed, and it was just, that was probably, he said, this is one of the best nights of my life. I'll never forget that. So he was in the oil patch for 15 years, what we call the oil patch. And Gulf Oil was merging with Chevron and going through a lot of structural changes, and Chevron was calling the shots. And we were told we had two choices of next location. And it was either going to be Bakersfield or Houston. And we really wanted to get back east. So Bill started talking to his head. He was well known in his field. And so he decided to talk to some headhunters, and we were looking to move back. And he translated his skills to the pharmaceutical industry and joined Squibb it was in Lawrenceville at that time, as the VP of Public Affairs for Squibb. So that brought us to New Jersey, and I'm still there. I just sold my house of 34 years, but I'm still in the area. So that's what brought us to New Jersey. Now I still continue to take these courses, but I was really getting down to, I was still freelancing. But I decided what schools I wanted to apply to, and I applied to NYU and Wharton and Penn, Wharton and Columbia and Rutgers, and I think, and one other, but whatever. I got in, waitlisted at Columbia, but then I got in. I was torn between NYU and Wharton. Started there, it just wasn't the right fit for me. I won't go into why. Got my money back and transferred on to NYU, and it was a great program in marketing. And I wound up doing some research actually for NYU, because they had just gotten the Stern naming grant from Leonard Stern from Hart's Mountain, and they wanted to be more competitive. So they wanted to know what the top schools, what their curricula was like. And I did a little research for them and made a report about how we might improve some of our programming and our courses. During the Bristol Myers Squibb merger, again, for the same kinds of reasons, things happen and evolve. And Bill was thinking, oh, I see a typo. Sorry about that. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so he was a client of Burson Marsteller when he was at Gulf Oil. And in 1970, together they created this amazing project called Crisis Port, which got all kinds of recognition, not only in the oil industry, but all in the corporate world. And what it was a simulation exercise to prepare companies across the world you create a simulation of a crisis, but you don't let everybody know it's a simulation. So they think it's real. And then you go through the protocols that you set up, and then you determine whether they're effective or need to be improved. And and he got a major award. So when he was looking to make a change, Harold Burson said, you got to work for Burson Marsteller, and he joined the corporate division. So while how am I doing here? Any questions?
But keep going, Terry.
Okay, all right, with Pfizer. Okay, so I was blessed to get a paid internship at Pfizer while I was at NYU. And it was in market research, and I was gifted with having creative ability, but also analytical ability. And somehow I was able to look at data and develop a profile for doctors, like different specialists, and what was different about them, and how to deal with them differently. So they kept giving me more and more work. And then they wanted to hire me. I didn't want to work in product marketing, so I continued as a consultant. While I was at Pfizer, I was introduced to an organization called Healthcare Business Women's Association. It was a regional organization at that time, and also for 25 years. And my boss at that time said, I think you'd really like this organization. Why don't you come as my guest? And then I joined, and then I was involved ever since. And then I actually got on the board many years later, and was on the president of the organization. Now they're global. Okay, Dancing with Omar. So, all right, another one of these luminary stories, and where people, famous people. So here I am. I'm an intern at Pfizer. Bill calls me up and says, you want to go to a black tie event? Now it's during the week. It's in New York at the Pierre, and it's for the American Film Institute. And Harold Burson was on the board, or a big supporter, and they were all about getting money to restore films. And they had just restored and added footage to Lawrence of Arabia, so they were going to show it. And I said, that sounds kind of interesting. So we sat it, and it was a $1,500 a plate dinner. It was amazing. So we said, yeah. I didn't know what to expect. Okay, so this is a Thursday night. I have to work the next morning, but we get on. We go to a point in New York. We all go to the Pierre. The whole ballroom is dressed up like a big tent, and we are surrounded by famous people. They had Omar Sharif and Peter O'Toole, David Lean, who was the producer and the director. Steven Spielberg was the honorary chair with his wife, Amy Irving. We had Dick Cavett. We had Patti LuPone, who had just performed Evita. We had, everywhere we turned. Superman, Christopher Reeve, may he rest in peace, was there. It was unbelievable. Rocky, he had two women, blonde bombshells on either arm, and it was just, we were surrounded, and here we were dancing with great music and everything, and we kept saying, and Bill and Terry Cox, and there are all these people, but we had a chance to meet a lot of people because of connection with Harold. And so Omar Sharif asked me to dance, and I danced with Omar Sharif. He noticed that I was dancing, and Bill wanted to take a break and talk to some of his buddies at the table, so he just came up and he said, would you like to dance? I had just met him, and I said, sure. And it was a slow dance, and it was very nice.
Okay, let's jump to the.
Okay, I just wanted to say that the next day at Pfizer was quite a discussion, because they want to know how the event was, and I had to shift it back to reality. It was not an easy shift, but it was fun. What an event. One of those nights I'll never forget. Okay. While I was at NYU and at Pfizer, I had to work out my schedule at both places because I was constantly making trips every weekend or every other weekend to help my mom cope with my dad, who had Alzheimer's. During that time, during those years, she also developed congestive heart failure. And she wanted to keep him home, and it was a big challenge. But that's it started then, and it went on for years. So I got my MBA from NYU in 1989, and my father passed away in January of 1990. And so I was asked, as I was thinking about after I was getting my MBA, where I wanted to work next. And a fellow alum headed up the healthcare division at Burson Marsteller. I didn't want to apply there. They're going to all say, oh, Bill, you're going to get the job because of Bill. But I got it. I wanted to do it anyway. But Marilyn Castaldi, who headed up the healthcare practice, was a good friend. And she said, there is no way you're going to interview at any of the competitors. I want you to work for Burson. And I did. So I joined her in the healthcare division. And I had a lot of great projects, but one of the most meaningful was we were part of the team that created Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. It started out as a week. And what a lot of people probably don't know is that Breast Cancer Awareness Month started the same way. They were both branded projects from pharmaceutical companies, just in case you aren't aware of that. And then it was taken over with way beyond one company. Astra, before AstraZeneca, started breast cancer awareness. So what it was about was back then, and this is in 1999 and 2000. 1991. People were not talking about prostate cancer. Men were not following up and having annual screenings. And one of the things that all studies showed is it's one of the most curable cancers if detected early, but you have to detect it early, and it can be contained if you get it early. So we were working on a program. They had a product in the mix that was in clinical trials called Ulexin that was actually going to be able to treat a little more advanced stage. And that was the good news, is that if you were diagnosed, you could get treatment and you could actually be cured. So, and I had a chance to work with Rocky Bleier, who was the spokesman for our project, which was amazing. And we were talking about our days in Pittsburgh and the Steelers of the 70s, and it was a pretty cool time. I developed a partnering program, and this is where I learned everything I learned at United Mental Health came in handy, because I create win-win partnerships between companies and stakeholder groups. And so NAARP, usually doesn't work on the same side or agree to work on the same side with the pharmaceutical industry, but in this case, this was the first time they did. And I developed a slide program that was all about the stages of prostate cancer that they want. And I worked with National Cancer Institute, Cancer Care, and the American Foundation for Urologic Diseases to have the urologists join couples at the AARP chapters. And we had a whole slide program and everything about the good news about prostate cancer and the importance of early detection and treatment, because it was the most curable, one of the top curable cancers if you get it early enough. And Bill, my husband, we said we need a gray-haired suit. So we contacted him, and he was in one of the slides because Ulexin was a pill, taking a pill. And there was a little irony about that, but I'll share that later. The bad thing I love Burson, and I'm still in touch with people that I worked with there, a wonderful company, but Philip Morris was one of their accounts. And in those days, they also were not as strict with anti-smoking laws. So they allowed a lot of it, and a lot of the principles, like I'd be in a closed office and around a conference table, and they'd have pipes and cigarettes, and I'd have to leave because I'd be coughing. So I didn't last that long, and I had to quit. I had to stop. I had been a smoker in Denver, but I developed it in Denver, and then I had asthma. So I had my doctor said under doctor's orders I could no longer work there. I was trying to work a couple days at home, but it didn't work. So I was upset and I wanted to turn it into something positive. So I said, you know what? I'm going to be trained by the American Cancer Society as a smoking cessation trainer. Now, Bill was stressed out. He was working for had just moved on to another agency and heading up the healthcare practice, and he started smoking again. And I wanted to get him to quit, and he couldn't smoke around me, but he was in the city until the wee hours, and he was smoking 3 packs a day. So I joined American Cancer Society, was trained as a trainer to get him to quit. I helped him and others. And then they asked me to chair the Tobacco Control Task Force, and I served on the board of directors of the American Cancer Society Eastern Division that served New York and New Jersey, and played a key role in getting the Clean Indoor Air Act passed in both states. I worked tirelessly. There were 5 of us, and we were constantly going to hearings and testifying, anything to get that to pass. Now, all of this time, I'm continuing to make the trips to help my mom. Now, she was in an apartment in the Morafield Apartments next to Poli's, and she wanted to be independent, and she was trying to be independent for as long as she could. Thank goodness she had a wonderful doctor. She was in and out of the hospitals constantly, but she made it to be 84 because she had such great care. And I was advocating for her constantly, and I was in touch with the doctors constantly. They were constantly getting fluid out of her and everything. She managed, but she had a stroke in October of '98 and then passed away right before Thanksgiving. And ironically, and Bill still, I mean, I'm going to go forward, and the chronological order isn't exactly right, but what I want to say is that Bill, ironically, 11 years later, was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Now, the good news was I had great contacts. I knew all about it, and I could get him the care he needed. And he fought it for 11 years, but unfortunately, it was not diagnosed soon enough, and it wasn't curable. So he just had to use hormone therapy, but he got through it for another 11 years before he died. Now
let's move on to your
I'm moving.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm moving. Okay, this is when Bill Clinton was president, and he and Al Gore were going to be talking at Fairleigh Dickinson University on tobacco issues. And I was appointed as the adult with the American Cancer Society, the American Lung Association, American Heart Association, we call it the triumvirate. And I was designated as the adult to be with the smoke-free class of 2000 in New Jersey to greet the president at the tarmac at Newark Airport. Now, I was given a t-shirt and I had my spiel, and there I was, and there were a whole lot of kids to the right of us, but I had to have my spiel. So okay, so they moved forward. He's talking to the kids, and I hear this dry voice on my left. And it's Al Gore. Nobody's telling me that he's going to join us, and I don't have a t-shirt for him. I wasn't prepared for him. So I hear this voice saying, "Hello there." I turn, "Oh, Mr. Vice President." So I wound up saying, "I don't have a t-shirt for you." And he goes, "That's the story of my life." And so, but we talked, and in any case, and I thank them both for being there, and it was great fun. And we made both of them honorary members of the smoke-free class of 2000. Okay, let's see, where are we now? Where are we on? What was that, the next slide, or is that because we're shifting here? I'm not going to read all this stuff, but I can just talk. But okay, yeah,
Talk about this project.
Yeah, let's go talking about let me talk about my company. I have to go back to CCP, where we launched CCP. There you go. Okay, so in '92 we had been talking about creating an agency, and we weren't going to hire a bunch of people, and it wasn't going to be bricks and mortar. We were going to work out of our home, but we knew so many people that were seasoned, had the same quality standards we did all over the world. We had worked on projects in Asia and Europe, and so and a lot of them wanted to go on their own or were on their own. So we liked that model, and we said, you know what, we're going to do this. So we were thinking about it, and then I was contacted by the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association, which is now called PhRMA, the trade association for the pharmaceutical industry. And it was when Bill was elected and Hillary was about to take on healthcare reform issues, and I was steeped in it by then. in a lot of those issues. And I was also doing a lot of advocacy training for American Cancer Society, Lupus Foundation of America, and others. And so PMA contacted me to be their regional consultant, not in lobbying, but in third-party advocacy, bringing constituents and advocates from patient groups, from caregiver groups, from the medical community, whatever, to Washington, and also at the state level on state issues, if they had common ground with the industry position on certain things. And that was an amazing project. And Bill and I said, what I said was, for the right price, Bill could be included in that too. And we put together a proposal, and that was our company. So that was good for years, because we were part of the cadre that were working in Washington to get the healthcare reform at that time defeated. And I believe Hillary and Terry McAuliffe, who was the governor of Virginia and ran her campaign, he would agree with you. They learned a lot. They weren't sure, they weren't on the right track, and it needed to be defeated. Obamacare did a lot better job of including all of the stakeholders, et cetera. So it was good that it was defeated. Now, getting to this, we worked on so many different projects on so many different levels, with pharma, with the biotech industry, with the patient groups, with so many different kinds on all levels, with schools, and of all the projects, I'm going to say the AZI project was the most meaningful and touched more lives and had more of an impact. And I'm all about making a difference. And this made a big difference. I did research for AZI because they were in Aricept, their drug Aricept for Alzheimer's was in clinical trials, and there was nothing to slow down Alzheimer's at that time. And it looked really promising. And they knew I had already developed a relationship with AARP in the industry for sharing cloud, and they wanted to connect and establish positive working mutually beneficial relationships with seniors groups, with caregiver groups, with volunteers, with nursing groups. And they said, can you find a project? Can you identify a project that would really make a difference? And not a brand. We're not about promoting Aricept. This is a corporate program putting us on the map, but also beginning to partner with these organizations for the long term. So I did research with 12 organizations, including AARP, National Council on the Aging, the Alzheimer's Association, the National Family Caregivers Association, the Interfaith Caregivers Alliance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I kept hearing, we need a comprehensive, user-friendly training program to train volunteers to support the needs of caregivers of chronically ill older adults. And I went, oh my God, we have to do this. Oh my God, I've been doing this. I know what it did to my mother. I know what it's been doing to me. The caregiver, no one, they would say, how's Bill doing? They don't ask how you're doing. They don't offer help, and a lot of times the caregivers get sick taking care of the loved one. So I said, oh, I hope we can do it. It turns out we had a champion there. We pitched it to the highest level. And Bill Sheldon, who was the COO, his father-in-law was ill and living with them, and his wife carried the burden. He totally said, we have to do this. They funded it, 4-year project, okay, and over 13,000, and all free, 13,000 organizations across the country were using it, were able to use it. It was published in 2000. And they created a website, caringtohelpothers.com. It was in existence till 2018, but this is from 2020. From 2000 to 2018. Okay, and so they kept it going, and it has made such a difference. And also because it was from a Japanese pharmaceutical company, they translated parts of it and using it in Japan as well, and it's still in use. A lot of the information is there.
Let's go on
moving right along. Okay. So during that time, we met so many. I mean, we were working on the Hill. So I mean, I met, Biden and Schumer, and we had meetings with them, with their aides. We also had an opportunity to meet John McCain at a fundraiser for Dick Zimmer, and he remained a friend. And it just so happened, you can't see it. There's the tail end of it is on the picture. You see a little white. He had a big bandage on his face because he had just had his melanoma surgery on his face. And Bill this is in 1999, had just had his surgery for prostate cancer. So we shared information. We were talking about politics. We also talked about praying. We all surrounded each other, put our arms around each other, and prayed for all of our good health. And I said, Senator McCain, we need your leadership, and I hope, and I hope you live a long life. I was devastated when he died, and he did, ultimately. But I kept in touch with him, and you want to get back to that book. Just the slide, yeah. Okay, so I got in touch with him years later, and I kept in touch for a while, and I got in touch with his staff. There was a fundraiser for him in New York, and I brought the book, Why Courage Matters. And at that point, Bill was down to his last 6 months, and he was in hospice. And I went to the event, but I had written to his team, and I said, I'm going to come, and I'd really love, if I could connect for Bill, on Bill's behalf, with Senator McCain, and he could sign the book, it would mean the world to me, and it would mean the world to Bill. So I went to the event. It didn't look like it was going to happen. It almost didn't. And then at the end of the event, I walked into the ballroom. He's talking to some people. And I said, Senator McCain, he waved me over. I talked to him. He said, how's Bill doing? He gave me a big hug, and he signed the book. Okay. What a great guy. He was a wonderful man, no matter what party you're in. John McCain was one of a kind. Anyway, okay. So I had to figure out what's next. Bill passed away in 2010. We were partners in everything. And it was not an easy change. I felt I wasn't sure whether my life was over. I said, who am I? What do I do? How do I get through this? I started taking courses. I started, dancing. I joined meetup groups, all kinds of different things to learn how to get through it. Now, one of the things
about this project, Terry.
Pardon me?
Tell us about the Grounds for
okay.
Sculpture.
The Grounds for Sculpture. I was going to weave that in. Now, the one thing about Grounds for Sculpture is very interesting. It goes back a little bit. Grounds for Sculpture opened in '92, the same year that we started our practice. We got that publicity, so they asked us if we wanted to be their agency of record. Could you come for an information session? I was totally booked with pharma work. Bill was pretty much, but he went to the session anyway, came back. He says, I don't think we can do justice to it, but you got to see this place. It was just opening up. And Stuart Johnson, who is he just passed away last year, but he was the founder and he's a world-renowned sculptor. If you don't know his name, a lot of his sculpture is like the Navy guy kissing the nurse, the 25-foot sculpture in New York, that's his. And he has them all sizes, Marilyn in a white dress, all over the world, and he's very well known. But he bought the old New Jersey fairgrounds that were brown ground and disrepair, and he had this vision, and he created this amazing, gorgeous, world-class oasis called Grounds for Sculpture. And we started from the very beginning. When they had memberships, we joined, and I've served on the board of trustees. I think I'm in my third 3-year cycle.
Okay, we're going to conclude with the chicken of the soup and your relationship.
And Jack Canfield. Okay, and I wasn't showing all the books, but I think there's a slide there. When I was trying to recover and move on in my life, I looked at a lot of things, and I was taking a lot of courses. And one of them, I started taking a lot of courses with Jack Canfield, and I was getting inspired. And about the rest, about the success principles, but also some of his chicken soup for the soul stories. But also the power of now, and loving what is. They're all different kinds of messages to help you focus on what's going on in your life now and putting to rest without more. You have to go through the mourning process, but how to get through it more easily. I started doing talks about it right before COVID, helping midlife women go through changes. I'm starting to do podcasts. But Jack Canfield, well, I took a couple of webinars from him. He always asks questions about why are you doing this and what's a little bit about your background. And then he reached out to me and sent me an email saying, would you be interested in co-authoring a book with me? And he got me in touch with his agency in Florida. And they were writing the book, The Recipe for Success. And I applied. I was accepted right away. And I am chapter 3. Now, what I want to say about that is, how are we doing on time?
We're
was
right at
honored.
the end, so we're going to wrap it up in a minute.
Okay, I'm going to.
Wrap up.
Okay.
Okay.
But what I want to say is we talked about the mug, the coffee mug from my mom. And I actually want you to know that Pittsburgh, I could have written the chapter in a lot of different ways. And I had to think about what really was my recipe. And my title is Inspired Success, Aligned from Within, Manifested Outside the Box. My whole world, my whole life, everything was outside the box, and Transformative by Design. And I actually wrote about and started writing about my middle class neighborhood in Pittsburgh and how I was getting ready to go to high school, and I had gotten this gift from my parents to influence me. And I had to read it, and I wept. I mean, it grabbed me, it resonated, and I said, I want this life. And I'm going to read it to you because it's the most powerful definition of success, and it's from Emerson. It's a quote. To laugh often and much, and some of you I'm sure are familiar with it. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation. I'm going to get weepy. I did it when I was reading to Bob. To endure earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. Here I go. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. That is to have succeeded. And when I look, I have to catch my breath for a second. My asthma, I have my inhalers right here. I knew I would get emotional, and what I want to say about that is it touched my life, but it actually was a model for my life. And when I look back, I realized that a lot of my projects, if you add it up, I've touched millions of lives. And for that, I'm proud because I made a difference and I did exactly what my parents wanted me to do in my life. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And thank you for your patience and for listening to me.
Thank you, Terry. And certainly most of us, and myself included, had no idea of all the different things you've done over your life and all the different way you've touched people through your work, through your publications, through your work with the National for Women, your work through mental health, work through everything. And so it's great. So we're going to open it up for any comments or questions from anybody. So take yourself off mute if you have a comment or question for Terry.
Yeah, I do. Terry, it was also 1972 when I saw Richie Havens live. Mm-hmm. However, the lead-up group was the James Gang with Joe Walsh.
Oh my God!
and I would not have wanted to be Richie Havens after that show.
Oh, I'm sure not. Oh my God, that's funny. I wonder how he felt about that. Wow.
I don't. He did a great show, but you know, when you're following that guy, you know, it's a little
that's
much.
Funny.
Yeah.
Hey, anyone else want to have a question or comment? Just unmute yourself and step up.
I was at Gulf in the early 80s. I worked there as an engineer, but those were bad times. There were two major layoffs when I was there. I was wondering if that's why your husband started smoking.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that a lot of his colleagues did, and they would all be working late hours and everything. So he started, then he quit. When we were in Denver, I was a light smoker, but then I developed asthma, so I quit. And then when he started working and having intense agency jobs in New York, he started again. But also, they were going through a lot of restructuring and changes. It's like every company, Squibb with Bristol Myers, Burson was also going through. So every time he had to shift gears again. But yeah, he was with Gulf for 15 years. He started in 70. But yeah, I mean, so you might have, I'm sure you know, you probably knew a lot.
I probably saw some memos from him.
I'm sure.
May I go?
Yes, Donna, you're up.
Okay. So, Terry, I'm going to go with your heart and mine. And, you know, I went to grade school with Terry. I knew Terry's mother. I spent time at the house. And that was a really beautiful ending. And I know she's very proud of you.
Thank you. I miss my parents very much. I'm sure you do too. You know what that's like. So, but yeah, it's I think about them all the time. And as I said, I could have written this chapter so many different ways. And that, you know, and then I remembered all I had to do was remember the mug. And that was it. And then it kind of wrote itself. And afterwards, I wasn't able to see any of the other chapters, and I was working in a vacuum with the agency. I didn't even know if it was good or compared to the, you know, I didn't know. And then I actually got the editor's award. I was one of the top 3 chapters. I was shocked, but they said part of it was all because of the heart. Because of the heartfelt story. And I want to mention it's sold out. It was an Amazon bestseller. So it sold out. I still have some. If anybody is interested, you can email me. I'd be happy to send you a signed copy if you're interested. There are a lot of other people in it. I will turn around and, I mean, this is it. And then, but there are a lot of people, and they're entrepreneurs from all over the world that they were selected. They're doctors and they're real estate agents or what. But and what I won't go into a lot about what I talked about, but it really is what kind of a structure for beginning to think about your own success and how to identify your passion and then work on it. What are your skills? What do you love doing? I was a wordsmith. I loved words. If I couldn't be an art teacher, and I keep thinking of
That became Donna Hetrick. She was.
I know. You know, I mean, that's why I'm saying. And I called her after that for a little while. I called her Fester Feynman because I was annoyed that she said that to me. But I won't. You know, but I mean, that was one of those, you know, things because it was like she broke my heart. But she actually gave me good advice because then I moved into what I needed to move into. So. It really wasn't a loss.
Anybody else want to comment? Because we do want Chuck is on the line. He might have a couple comments about.
I was going to ask, based on your work with the women's studies, do you think Andrew Cuomo was a success?
I never met Andrew. Actually, I met his father years ago. But I think he was a success in certain ways. I'm sorry about the stories, but I also believe them. So I think he did the right thing. And I have to also say, I won't get into specific stories, but even at the radio station, I mean, it was blatantly sexist in the 70s. They couldn't get, and even at the Mart, they could not get away with what we had to face every day. I mean, the sales manager at the radio station, I'm not going to mention his name. I was called into a meeting because when the continuity director was on overload, I would write copy on top of everything else. Like if I had a little bit, they'd say, can you do this too? And the salesman liked my copy because it was a little bit fresh and the continuity director, every ad sounded the same. So, okay, so I would do that and I'd be doing that. And I was called to a meeting. I'm sitting in the back kind of wanting to just kind of, you know, just listen. And the guy who's calling the meeting says, oh, there's Terry. Oh, you pretty little thing. Why don't you come up here and sit on my lap? And
I laugh about it now, but I went
but that's what they did
in the 70s.
I know, but it was a constant.
Yeah.
It was a constant. I mean, you guys probably don't want to hear this stuff, but I'm just saying it was a constant and what you had to put up with. And I said, what do? I don't want to get fired. So I actually did walk up, but I sat so weirdly that I actually, you know, I put pressure on the very edge of his kneecap so that he actually moved me away very quickly, which was great. But I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to ignore. It was like, you know, looking back, I would never have done that. But, you know, in your 20s, you know, and you're just starting out.
You don't know.
But we were under so much pressure. In Atlanta, it was even worse. And that's why I didn't want to stay. It's a fabulous city. There's lots of interesting things. Every city that I've lived in is interesting. I've also lived in New York. I didn't say this, but I did a brief stint in retailing at B. Altman's. But I decided I didn't want to do retailing stuff. But I've lived in different places, and every place has its strengths and weaknesses. But during the 70s, the sexism and racism in Atlanta really got to me, and I didn't want to stay. That was I wanted to get back to what we were used to.
So-
Do you remember the healthy, when we all danced together? We would go to dances and it didn't even occur to us. I mean, it was like, what a great school and what a great education. The kids today have no clue about, they don't even come close to what we had at Peabody and in our elementary schools too. We got fabulous educations, and we got, oh my God, and the homework. How many hours of homework?
4 a day.
Parents putting up with that? No way. But
So
we
let's-
got an education, a fabulous education.
So this is great way to,
Hey, Bob, let me just say one thing, Terry. Hi, Terry.
Hi
Yeah.
there.
When
Go
you were in Atlanta,
Mhm.
I was in Atlanta, and Deborah was in Atlanta. She was in the merchandise mart probably every day you were there.
Oh my God.
She was a buyer for Davison's.
Oh my God.
So she was over there for the apparel mart.
The
all
apparel
time.
markets on the weekends, yeah.
And when I was there, I was brought down there by Movado. So I was over there for any and all jewelry shows. And I am shocked that we never ran into each other.
I am too. I mean, I was doing, I even we had it on the first floor with Governor Busby's office.
Yep.
There was always stuff going on the first floor, and they had the International Food Festival. We had Craig Claiborne, we had Julia Childs, we had, and I met all these people, all of them, because I was handling all the PR. But I mean, I needed 3 other people. I mean, it was a crazy job. But I also handled the Atlanta Decorative Arts Center. But I mean, I'm surprised
Yeah,
too that we never ran into each other. That's
Where
great.
were you living?
Not far from Buckhead.
Okay.
How about you?
What, were you up by Lenox?
Yeah, not too far from there. Yeah, in an apartment.
We were up in Dunwoody.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
yeah, it would
Okay.
take it was only like
We
what,
can
a 20
swap
minute drive.
stories. We can get on. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can talk about that.
do
That's
this
really interesting.
okay, I
We'll
wanted
do it
to,
later.
I'm sorry, I wanted to conclude because I try to keep this on schedule.